welcome to our second annual season of Nebraskabilities. I am Andy, joined by my lovely co-hosts here of Nate and Zach. And well, it's been last time we talked was after the spring game, and you can take away what you want from the spring game, but it's our first chance for most people to see Matt Rule and his staff in Nebraska colors in front of our fans, Memorial Stadium, all of that. But I mean, just, ever since last season, I mean, obviously a lot happened with Frost being fired mid-season last year, and then the whole coaching search and everything like that. But, we've come almost that time of year again. We got about 8 days till kickoff now at the time of this recording. So it's definitely starting to feel like football season again. And as always, it's just kind of the emotional roller coaster of you get down after every losing season, and it's just like, where do we go from here? What happens? And you get a new coach, you start to just take a little sip of that Kool-Aid, and just it keeps going and going and going and flowing. And a week from football season starting, and you just feel like Nebraska's gonna 14-0, run the playoff, be top of the world again. And that's just we're chucking the Rule right now, and it's so hard not to love what Matt Rule has done up until this point. It's like the small things that our previous coaches didn't really do as much. It's just getting out into the community. I mean, he's obviously trying to associate and be, cultured in a sense to the younger players with, being on Twitter so much and just being more active in social media. And that's why he's just always been touted as a great recruiter with that going into what he wants, try to establish his culture in Nebraska. And, we've heard nothing but good things from the players, the staff, himself, and what he's been trying to establish at Nebraska right now. Obviously, that's all great said and done until, the games are what matter. And everything comes down to the games for his final, stamp on what he's going to leave here at Nebraska and how he's going to do at Nebraska here. But, I'm excited. We're so close to football season. You're just having football back again. In terms of what happened during the offseason, other than just, Nebraska missing on Dylan Raiola, which you can look at it both ways as yes, you missed a top end recruit quarterback, but just to say that Nebraska was in the hunt for, the top quarterback in the nation and, just being up there against, the two-time reigning national champ of Georgia in that conversation to get him, I think it's just something that says that whatever Matt Rule is telling these recruits to get them to come to Nebraska is obviously sparking some interest and, just kind of making some small tidal waves for future recruits of, Nebraska may not be winning, but, recruits talk to each other and we know that. And it's just something that it's another component of Matt Rule that is what we love to see out of a coach. And like I said, just not a whole lot that happened during the offseason in terms of anything big program shakeups that Nebraska is typically used to during the offseason, whether it's not wanting to play Oklahoma or getting COVID fined for having extra practices or whatever during that whole COVID NCAA thing. But outside of that, I mean, I'll pass it off to Nate here just for some early offseason thoughts, and then we'll get right into the grind of previewing the team and the season going forward.
Yeah, I'll just kind of echo what you were talking about where, Coach Rule seems like he's doing a lot of the kind of heavy lifting, the footwork. He's getting out, visiting a lot of recruits, going around the state. He's on Twitter, X, whatever you want to refer to it as now, but he's still got his cryptic tweets going from time to time, and he's just really engaging personality. And his press conferences and radio interviews and stuff are pretty informative. He's pretty just open, honest, and all that is to say it's really great optics, and it's a far cry from where the program was even just a year ago that he is willing to just kind of be there and just be open with the media, be open with the whole state. And so it's kind of comforting to see that. But again, it will ultimately come down to the product on the field. I mean, there's a lot of hype around at least the potential. I know expectations aren't necessarily lofty or anything, but I mean, there's been some talk that we could see at least a modest, reasonable season out of this year. We'll have to see. I mean, in theory, we have the players to at least make a little bit of noise, but we'll have to see how things shake out on the field. And it's an exciting time. I mean, as you mentioned, new coach, a lot of turnover, some new faces, but actually quite a bit of retention player-wise as well. So I'm just, I don't know, being ready for what comes next. I'm excited for the potential, excited for the future. I think there's a lot to be really excited for. I'll just kind of leave it at that and pass it over to Zach. But I'm really excited that football's back, regardless of how the season goes. I'm happy we're back. So I'll pass it over to Zach.
Yeah, I mean, you guys echoed pretty much what I'm going to say. I do want to mention that I'd like to thank anybody that's checking out this episode, whether you're new or old. Like, either welcome back to another year of Nebraskabilities, or welcome to a new year of Nebraskabilities, depending on if you're new or not. Another thing that I think that we should mention is that if you're new, Nebraskabilities came from the idea that if there was a way Nebraska could get a lead of 3 touchdowns and then find a way to lose the game, it was always a great ability of Nebraska to be able to do that. And so it wasn't just a possibility, it was a Nebraska ability, which is now the tagline of, the podcast. So again, if you're new, now you understand. Unfortunately, now as we go forward, we're kind of hoping that we don't have to say that as much in terms of, what Matt Rule brings to the team. I think now, granted, Nebraska is known to be off-season champs. I think we're on 10 years now, probably. I don't know anymore,
Easily.
But we've had a decade of off-season Kool-Aid and off-season winning. So I mean, why stop there? We're right in there again. But with that, something that's different this year with us chugging the Kool-Aid of Nebraska football is that Matt Rule has done an interview with, I think it was Damon Benning, and he said, I want people to say that. He's like, you don't win just during the season, you win in the off season. And so he wants the entire team to buy into the idea that you win throughout the entire year, not just throughout the season. And so, we're hoping again that even though our namesake of our podcast is based on how Nebraska was able to lose those big games, we're hoping that the introduction of Matt Rule is the corner that we were trying to turn for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like Nate said, we see that quite a bit of player retention, which is always kind of surprising when you have it. But I think it also speaks to what Rule is telling, these guys as, what their expectations are as coaches. And I mean, we saw that, which we'll discuss later when it comes to specifically talking about, the new coaches and their visions. But I think you saw a lot of really, really good things just in terms of messaging and what Matt Rule brings to the table. And I know that a lot of people, and we mentioned this too when we talked, for our live stream during the spring game, that a lot of people seem disappointed with the Rule hire. And I could kind of understand it, and I think the three of us agreed, so correct me if I'm wrong, but Matt Rule was the hire that Nebraska needed instead of some flashy hire. Not to take away from an example being like Luke Fickell, not to take away from what he's done and what he's probably going to do at Wisconsin. There's another example of one that we don't know how that's going to work out, him coming from Cincinnati, but there, I think, is a lot of question marks in the Big Ten this year. And I think that's a great thing in terms of what Matt Rule's bringing in. But I also think the stability that he's shown in college football is going to be a great thing. Yes, his tenure at the Carolina Panthers was not very great, but he's also owned that. And that's one of the big things for me, as you can call me a Matt Rule stan now, I guess, is that he has gone on record multiple times saying, Carolina didn't work out. I didn't do good enough. And I think there's something to be said for a head coach that is humble enough to see that he failed at the highest level of football, at least in America. I don't know if he coached overseas, if he did any football anywhere else. I don't think he did, but regardless, point is, I think Matt Rule is going to be off to a great start. And that's, what we're here to talk about, along with, previewing the games over the years, or the years, sorry, the year.
Also years too.
Yeah. Hopefully, hopefully we can keep people around long enough, but, yeah, we'll see. So anyway, with that, I figure, what better time to get into the preseason and kind of what's happened since the spring game than now. And Andy, I will let you take that away.
Yeah. So we'll just what I was thinking of what we should do, and we'll just make this an open discussion for all of us, is we'll just kind of go, however long we want to talk about, just position by position of what we have seen so far, what we've heard through fall training camp, all of that, of just like you talked about, who's being retained, who are the newcomers, who are the new faces that we're going to see this season on the field, who are starters and all of that. But we'll start with, I think, one of the biggest. There's a lot of question marks, obviously, around this team because, new coaches, new schemes, new systems, new players leading the way. So this whole year is just, we don't really know what to expect. The spring game, we're never really going to see what the whole offense is going to be like or what the whole defense is going to be like. But, there's just a lot of unknowns going into the first game, second, third, whatever you want to call it, of what this team is going to look like, how they're going to mesh, how they're going to flow, what we're going to see out of them going forward. And obviously, I think the biggest thing that we had talked about was, there's the returning aspect, especially the wide receiver room. We know that, Casey and Jeff kind of had a good spring battle, but ultimately Casey transferred to Florida Atlantic. It's now going to be the starter there, announced a few days ago. But, Jeff Sims is now the quarterback, the face of the franchise, if you want to call it, face of the team. And, typically that's any quarterback in Nebraska. You're always going to be the model face of what the team is for any Nebraska team going forward. And, we've heard a lot of good things about Jeff Sim. Just his really only the stats that we have to go off of is, just his year at Georgia Tech. But, Matt Rule's talked about a lot throughout spring and fall camp that he's doing really well. They're meshing. The guys really love playing with Jeff Sims. His offensive line loves him, which is, what we also need.
Don't forget, real quick, though, is that the most important thing about Jeff Sims, especially today, and especially if you're a Nebraska native, is that he Amigos announced the partnership with Jeff Sims for NIL. What a
NIL money!
What a perfect thing. You can't write it, but you can't write Nebraska. No. Almost better than that. The next one needs to be Runza for somebody, but regardless,
and that's that's another example of being that face. Is unless you are really a true diehard Husker fan that kind of knows the team inside and out, an average college fan is not going to be like, well, who's this offensive lineman, doing an NIL deal with, Amigos, versus if you're the quarterback at any, top brand school, you're gonna be like, oh, I know that's the quarterback at Nebraska doing, an NIL deal with a restaurant or something like that to an average college football fan. So that's
Amigos
just another
is about to get so much money.
Yes.
They're going to get so much business as soon as that thing comes out.
Right. So we've heard a lot of good things about him. I think the biggest question mark of the QB room is, your backup quarterback position. Matt Rule really hasn't set a definitive number 2, number 3 between Chuba Purdy and Heinrich Harbaugh. He's said both of them have been really good. Heinrich's more of the runner, Chuba's more of the passer, but both have shown aspects of both abilities. And that's also another question mark about Jeff Sims in the offense is, how much are we going to see a quarterback run this year? Are we going to see, the running back room do more of the load? Is Jeff's going to be more of a passer? Are they going to mix it up? And that's why just having the backup position at Nebraska is definitely, as we've seen over the years, is we've never really have had a fully healthy starter at quarterback throughout the entire season without him getting hurt or being out a couple of games. So that's just just another big question mark on the offense is what are we going to see? Are they going to be more conservative with Jeff so that, when we need him, we can break him out of his shell versus, we're going into this game needing a win, but, our starter got hurt a couple games ago because all we did was run him. So that's also just kind of the, who are we going to see at backup? Who's going to be the first person to come in if Jeff is hurt or if he needs a break or anything like that. If both really have had little experience, I know the game that we saw of Chuba last year was blah. And that could be just, it's hard to chalk up to this that one performance. Is that really how he is? Is that just how Scott system, Mark Whipple's system, Mickey Joseph's system, all of that worked like that? So it's hard to say like, oh, that's exactly what Chuba Purdy is like. But Matt Rule's talked a lot about him this spring and said they both can really be tied at number 2 for a backup quarterback. But we're going to get a depth chart sometime this week, and we're really going to see who's number 2 and number 3. And that especially goes for the running back room. He made it clear earlier this week that Gabe Ervin's going to be the number 1 running back right now going into the season. We love saying Anthony Grant. We love Anthony Grant. But I mean, I appreciated how honest Rule was when he said, he's just been fumbling a lot in camp. You just can't have that on this team. And, you can look at it like, oh, why is he calling out a single player during his press conferences? Or you could look at it as, he's probably talked to Anthony personally, out of the media shadow about his problems, but it's also you're keeping your guys accountable. And hopefully that's just kind of like a wake up call to Anthony. It's like, okay, I need to work on this. I need to get better so I can be that number 1 starter. I can be that fill in if Gabe gets hurt or anything like that. But that's how I think how he's handled that so far. And that, Ramirez going to be the number 3, more of a third down passing option or blocking option. But, my opinion is I think it's just going to be whoever has the hot hand that week at practice or who's had the hot hand during the games of who's going to lead the backfield. Because it's really, we've seen kind of, over the past couple of years, flashes of all 3 guys that have been really good when they've been the starter between Gabe, Anthony, and Ramirez. So it's kind of, it's more of a wait and see of how they are going to play out when they are the starter, when they are taking more of the 20 plus reps a game type thing. And yeah, that might be the reality of Nebraska this year. We might be seeing them run 40, 50 running plays a game, especially if, Rule introducing that fullback option. We just might see a lot more runs this year if we're going to keep Jeff Sims healthy and, not run him as much and just keep him passing. But at least for the backs right now, that's kind of my 2 cents, my 2 thoughts on, Jeff Sims, your clear starter. Gabe Ervin has been made the clear starter. How is that going to play out? Are we going to see mixes of the running backs depending on who's hot? And that's both good and bad. You could have your running backs and then your passing backs, but you don't also want to become predictable at the same time. You want all your backs to do both those options. So that's what I'm hoping. Like, he says, like, if Ramirez a third down running back option, I mean, the defense is going to be like, oh, Ramirez in the game. They're probably passing the ball so that he's going to pass or catch the ball out of the backfield or run block, essentially. So with that, you two just want to jump in. Your thoughts, you can go into receivers, offensive line, just kind of keep going on from there. But that's kind of your update for the backs right now on offense of what is going to be.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and jump in and say that hopefully I think that running back situation is going to be kind of a 3-headed attack. Until Rule kind of gets his own guys in there, kind of can establish his own schemes and things like that and get, a top dog, like a 1 or 2 type top guys in there. I think we're going to see a bit of a rotation unless Gabe Ervin just kind of comes out and, which, I mean, I've seen some pictures of him on social media circulating and dude looks pretty big. So wouldn't surprise me if we see some taking the lead there from Gabe Ervin, but I think it'll be pretty close. And like you said, just riding the hot hand at that time, we'll get some random Ramirez, mixed in there. I know we all love that.
If he is a third down option, then yeah, it'll be random Ramirez.
You know what? I would like to point out, I hope we don't get random Ramirez because the thing is we always mentioned, like, why is he coming in now? Why is this a thing? Because the one thing that I'm taking from the running back room specifically for me is like, this reads to me like running back by committee, you know, the old RBBC. Nothing wrong with that. Granted, college isn't necessarily usually set up to do that as much. You know, usually you have a clearly defined back that is going to be your workhorse. But in this case, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think running back by committee will 100% be helpful, but we'll see. But anyway, back to your point, Nate.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's something right now that we need, and especially with just the luck we've had injury-wise, trying to keep everyone healthy, making it through a season. I think just giving everyone a spell and giving everyone a chance, at least early on in the season, first couple games, see how they just adapt to new schemes and everything, and how they actually come out and play when it's game time. So I think that'll be really interesting to see. It'll be a really, really fun battle to watch between those three guys. And then just QB wise, yeah, Jeff Sims starter. I don't think he has a whole lot of competition compared to comparison from last year. I don't know that Chubba or Harbaugh are necessarily going to be gunning for his job. But who knows? Maybe Chubba's been working with his brother over the off season, learned a few things. But
I think he was just named the starter. I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think Darnold was named
the backup behind in front of Trey Lance. So yeah, I mean that's by default. Brock is going to be the starter. But
I would love for us all to be proven wrong too. Like, I'd love for both of them to come out and ball out and have a legit, not a QB competition. Like, we need a starter, and I'm sure Jeff Sims is the starter. But on top of that, I'd love to see where like all three QBs are playing at such a good level that yes, Jeff Sims is the starter, but that's not a guarantee come next week. And I do think there are options there. I think it's possible. I think having, call me crazy, I think having a legit QB coach this year will help. And I do think, again, having Matt Rule and his level-headedness and with his, I don't know, with his demeanor, he just seems like he'll be able to get the best out of players. So I don't know. That's me. I guess I don't know if you guys disagree. I mean, I agree 100% that Jeff Sims is the starter, but I do think we can see some actual some rise in talent from the other two. And I don't think it's impossible. I think it might be a far stretch. I won't deny that, but I don't think it's impossible.
Right. And Rules made that clear as, you know, there's a tie for basically number 2. So, you know, we just have to trust his word of they're playing well, that they're competing well, and, you know, they're giving Jeff Sims a quote unquote competition. Obviously, we know that, you know, he's the starter, but
the question is just how big is the spot between first and second?
Second, you know? Right. Like... and that's just, you know, obviously the coaches know more than what we do. They are practicing, seeing these guys every single day. So you just have to go off his word till we see it on the field. And yeah, that's basically that point. But any other points there, Nate? Or we'll go right into the receiver tight end portion, or receiving backs, I guess.
Yeah, see. Go ahead and jump right in there. Yeah. I think that's about all I got on the backs. But
so I think if there's any, to me, and you guys might feel the same way too, I think the biggest question mark on the offensive side right now is the wide receiver room. And
would agree.
Xavier Betts came back. He worked, you know, took 21 credit class hours this summer just to get back on the team and got in the good graces of the staff, Rule, all of that. And then it was like a couple weeks ago that, you know, he just said his heart wasn't in football, just stepped away again. It's just, you know, you can't blame a guy for that. And it's hard to see him work that hard to try to get back and get there. And then, you know, he just, at the end of the day, just doesn't feel like he's ready to play football. And so that just takes away a veteran experience in that wide receiver room, because outside of that, from last year, you have basically Marcus Washington.
Well,
coming back.
Betts would have been great to have there.
Yes, I mean he's a speed threat.
Because with how much extra question marks we have this year, and I mean this whole year, and we said this before we even started recording, is that this whole episode is going to be this whole episode, year, whatever, put the timing in there, is going to be a giant question mark. We could be good, we could be terrible, we don't know. And the thing is like we have so many question marks across the board, specifically on the offense. We'll get to the defense later, but I think spoiler alert, I think our defense might be our strongest unit this year.
And I would agree with that.
But again, we'll get there. But when it was announced that Betts was leaving the team, the two things I noticed from that was, one, everybody was shocked because I should say three things. One, everybody was shocked. Two, that again, Rule was upfront and honest, and he basically said, yeah, Betts came to me today and said my heart's not in it and wish him the best. And I want to say that, not that our previous coaches going many years back have never said anything bad about the players, but I think it says a lot when a player who was destined to be a starter this year, no questions asked, and was working to come back and play as well as he was probably going to play on a very big question mark of a team, says a lot on what the coaches were wanting and expecting from him, and he still wasn't feeling it. That says a lot to how the coaches are being with the players. And then three, all of the coaches outside of just Rule, I think, is it Satterfield? Is that his last name?
Yep.
The OC. He even came out and said, yeah, that room's getting a little thin. We're going to have to expect guys to step up. The one thing I will say I've noticed across the board with all of these guys is that they're honest. Nobody's setting unreal expectations, specifically in the vein of we're going to make the Big Ten adapt to us. That did not
revisit that.
And at the time, the Big Ten adapting to us, it was a great, rally cry. We all loved it. We did. And if there's any Nebraska fan that was watching that heard that and they say, oh, I didn't love that, you might be lying to yourself just a little bit. Everybody loved that. It was a bit cocky, but again, I think there is a lot to be said that there is a lot of honesty coming out of the team now. And so this just going back to, the wide receivers and the tight ends and such, there's a lot of question marks there. And I think how they respond to having to step up and having to play in positions that they're new at, or, we might see some people that this is their first year in college playing, starting. Yeah. It could be good. It could be great. It could be terrible. We don't know. But the thing is we have to put, as fans, we have to put the faith in the coaches to say they're going to be ready. They might not be totally ready as Betts would have been, but I think I admittedly have a little more confidence that there's going to be at least somewhat a modicum of being ready compared to what we had previously. But again, I am forever the optimist. So I will say that. I am always forever the optimist. So I will pass back to one of you guys. I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, I mean, just because then you look at who's left. At that, they're expecting Billy Camp, the Virginia transfer, to be the starter, rightfully so. And a lot of good things have come out of camp about him as well. Then you go down the line of Marcus Washington, who hopefully might be ready by game time. I know he had a little hand injury over the camp, and they said he's, limited practice right now. So we might see him next week. We might see him very limited next week. We might not see him at all. So that's also thin right there too. But then you look at who's left. Well, Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, we played 3 games last year before he left the team, came back. So
also notable that he came back.
Yeah. So quote unquote, you could say experience coming back, but he played 3 games, and then who knows what he did when he left the team? If he even did workouts, who knows what he did when he left the team? So in a sense, that's a familiar name that comes back, but you got 3 game of experience that he came back from last year. So, and then outside of that, I mean, you're looking at your freshmen and sophomores and people like everybody else to step up. We might see Malachi Coleman at some point this season. I know they're really high on Joshua Fleeks, the Baylor transfer, and I don't know. I don't know if there's any issue with his waiver yet, or maybe there's something wrong with that.
That's
or maybe
Gilbert, the tight end.
Yes, okay, that's who I'm thinking
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
But I mean, outside of that, a lot of these other names are your freshmen and sophomores that these coaches might have to ask them to step up, because if one of those, I mean, barring any injuries in the wide receiver room, you're already thin there, like they all said. And I know they joked about like, can Fedoni be moved to receiver? And I think Rule said like, no, that's not an option right now. But that's, I mean, if you're having to ask those questions, and even if it's a joking way, like you kind of know that room is already thin. And yes, I mean, speaking of the Fedoni too, as far as we know, he's healthy. We haven't heard really anything that he's not healthy and not ready to go. So
one of our two glass cannons on the team.
Yes, yes. And if he's not ready to go, I know Borkature is probably going to be a top tight end. He played really well last year, and hopefully they're going to use him a lot. But also, if Rule's adding a fullback, is he thinking, one of your younger tight ends is going to be kind of molded into a fullback type guy? Or are they just going to throw, Anthony Grant in the backfield, Gabe Urban as the fullback? Based on
the classic 2 running backs
in the back room. But they really haven't had a designated fullback position, so you just kind of go and assume it's going to be one of the tight ends that gets moved to fullback. But that room, assuming I'm really high and bullish on that room. If they stay healthy, that the tight ends can be very useful, either blocking or receiving targets for this year. But again, assuming that they're all healthy and Fedoni can actually play this year. But I think they have a really good chance to be one of the more standout position groups on the team and really help us when we need them to.
Fedoni is also looking huge.
I was going to say Fedoni and Gabe Irvin are on the Nebraska beef train this summer.
Yeah,
which is another thing. Our strength and conditioning coach, and that's another like overall point, is that the strength and conditioning seems to have taken not a turn. One of the big things that has come out like news-wise is that a lot of players are noting that they've gained weight, but it's muscle, or they've gained a lot of quickness or whatever. And it's like, it appears that our previous staff was so focused on, getting big and beefy and not getting quick. And so, you'd see a lot of like linemen and stuff that, they were the biggest dudes that get off the bus. And then, they were half a second late, which half a second in football is huge. And so,
wait, are you bringing up the old Texas Mac Brown game there, Buckaroo?
Not on purpose, but turns out. Now I was also a second, by the way. Anyway, with that though, like I think it's a testament to how serious they're all taking it. And so like you've had players that are like, oh yeah, like we're quicker this year, we're bigger this year, but they're also like, I don't remember, there was some player I saw on Twitter and they did a comparison from last year to this year, and I can't remember who it was, but it was a lineman. And the guy went from, I don't want to say fat because he was way, he's still in shape, but he was definitely like a big hefty guy. And then all of a sudden he's like, I lost 20 pounds, but am, lifting 50 pounds more or whatever it was. And you could just tell. And it's like, it's a totally different mindset. And I am excited to see how that pays for us, because one thing I think we've all noticed outside of skill groups is that our guys that, up front are just, they weren't fast. I think they will be now. I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
I think it's huge, pay huge dividends.
And piggyback off that point, Nate, you can, we can kind of
interrupt us at any point.
I know too. But I mean, speaking of the line, this is like the most experienced group you've got returning from the offense. Is the majority of your line is back. The only retained coach is your experienced coach on the staff that has had Big Ten coaching experience for at least a year, but he's your most experienced coach that's retained right now. So
this is his make or break year.
Yeah.
Too.
And I'm kind of bullish on the offensive line too. I do think, there is going to be an improvement. How much, what that's going to look like, it's tough to say right now, but I do think we are going to see some sort of an improvement from the offensive line this year, just from everybody that's returning it. Prohaska had a little injury, but it sounds like he's going to be good to go by next
Him
week for the
and
game.
Marcus Washington are officially back as of I think today
Yeah.
or yesterday. Like they're full go.
So I mean, getting him back is huge, and I think they're going to make an improvement. Like I said, what that's going to look like, I don't really know right now, but I do think we are going to see an improvement from the offensive line, and that's going to pay dividends, especially if our wide receiver room is thin. Rule might we might see more of the running game this year. I'm kind of prepared for that of what we're going to see out of the offense. I think we're going to see a lot more runs right now. So you run the ball, people going to be very happy about that. But
that would be me, by the way. I run the ball, people.
run the ball, people. So,
but
I think that's how the offense is going to look.
Maybe you don't agree, Andy, and Nate. Maybe you disagree. You can hop in here too. I'm still as much as I think our offensive line is going to take a step forward. I'm still nervous.
I totally nervous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I don't know what that's going to look like. But in terms of what position group on the offense is going to probably be improved or look better from previous years, I think it's going to be the offensive line. And that's solely based on just who is coming back and your retained experienced coach coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I trust our offensive line as much as I trust our tackling, which is actually negative. I don't trust it at all. So
hey, they said they've been working on it.
So do the other guys. But like you said, there's a lot of experience returning on the offensive line. We'll get Norden Newley, however you pronounce his name, coming back from his suspension. So it'll be good to have him back. There's a potential there. Rayola, I know Matt Rule has a lot of praise for him, just kind of the intensity with which he coaches, the way he coaches, and has been able to kind of get these guys up to speed. And even if we just take a modest jump forward in the injury department and in the just overall conditioning department, I think that could be a group that is leaps and bounds better than it has been. And so it'll be exciting to see. And really the offense for us comes out of the offensive line. We've struggled to be able to keep Casey Thompson from getting knocked on the ground
alive.
Yeah.
Adrian Martinez. Also,
and you can't really have a running game if you're allowing the defense to be in the backfield within the first couple seconds. So I think if we're able to take that step forward, even if it's just a small step, I think we could see some really great improvements on offense. I think the athletes are there in the skill maker positions, and so if we can just actually give our playmakers a chance to get the ball, I think that opens up a lot of avenues for us to have success going forward. So.
Well, we've kind of maybe, I don't want to say beat a dead horse, but we've talked a lot about the offense, but I feel like the defense is being left out. And I know that I know Andy and I have said it. Maybe Nate, you agree, disagree. I think the defense is the unit that should be definitely discussed. The biggest question mark there, I think, isn't so much the talent. I think we've got a lot of talent. I also think Tony White is a great defensive coordinator. After we announced him, if you go back and watch, he was at Syracuse. Is that right?
Correct.
Syracuse made some pretty good jumps. I have nothing but praise for Tony White based on just what he's done in terms of accolades getting here. And also, like you guys said, Rule. And I understand a lot of this is head coach speak when they say it, but you can kind of tell, I think, when a coach is being genuine that they really, really appreciate what a guy does. But something that they also said is that a lot of these position coaches and a lot of the coordinators, Rule has said, hey, go do your thing. He doesn't want to oversee it. He says, I have faith that you're going to do what you want to do, which is where the 3-3-5, that's what Tony White runs as a defense. And a lot of people that are not familiar with it, me included, I'm not a defensive guru. I don't know necessarily anything about it. Rule said, hey, if that's what you want to run, do it. And he gave him the reins and said, I'm the guy at the end. I'm the guy that makes the decisions at the end of the day, but he hired him for a reason.
Right.
And he gave him the reins and basically said, hey, I don't want to make this my defense and my offense. I want to make this our team. And that's another big key thing that we found throughout Rule's, press conferences and stuff, is he has said multiple times, and even Marcus Satterfield and Tony White have said the same thing. They're like, hey, this is our defense. This is our offense. They're all owning it, as they're one team, and everything. It's chugging the Rule-8. I understand, but like they're checking off these boxes of like there's accountability across the board, and if you see all the things from their practices too. But I think we've got so many good returning talent players for the defense that I think I don't think we're necessarily going to be the greatest defense ever. And I'm not expecting that. There's going to be bumps, obviously. But I think, with Luke Reimer coming back and Gifford, and is it Heinrich or Heinrich?
Heinrich.
Okay.
Heinrich. Yep.
I always
Heinrich.
it's going to be all year that I'm going to get that wrong. So just FYI, we have a good experienced group on defense. And I think with the way that, the coaches they're coaching their guys, but Matt Rule is giving these guys their rope and saying, here you go do your thing. I think there's a lot of good things to be had there. Yeah. I mean, I am personally a fan of the linebacker group because that's what I played in high school.
Right.
Whether I played good or not, if anybody that knows how I played when I was in high school, go ahead. You can tell me if I'm wrong. But I think we've got a really, really good group, just in the backer spot. I'm really excited to see what that team or what that position group does.
Right.
But, I'll open it up for you guys because defense, I think, is going to be our strong suit this year.
Yeah. And that's counterpoint to that is, I think the question mark for me is just that defensive line. You lose Garrett Nelson, you lose a couple other guys to the draft last year. And, that's, if you want to look at how a 3-3-5 defense is run, TCU ran it last year. So it's just a lot of skill, athletic, fast guys. Is basically, and you can scheme it, any which way that you want to, but the majority of it is you have a lot of skill backers in secondary that kind of fill in the gaps after that. And you still want your front guys, your defensive guys, to be pushing the line around. But if you exactly have it set up as a 3-3-5 and you have 5 offensive linemen, you got to hope that your defensive linemen are pushing through a double team for most cases. But we'll see how it is set up. But Ty Robinson's the main returner on the defensive line, of a name that most people would know. And outside of that, I mean, Elijah Judy, the A&M transfer, and then really it's a lot of just other no big names that we've heard of. So
I've heard Cameron Lenhart's actually been making some noise. He's
freshman
on a
right
list for some All-American type freshman team.
Yeah.
So
Reimer also got put on a watch list of some form. But I mean, there you go. We got 2 people that are already being named to these lists. So
and that's kind of where my question mark comes in is, are you going to see more of the linebackers kind of fill in those gaps and play some more edge positions to help out with the defensive line, things like that. But I can't really speculate on what Tony White's going to run until we actually see it in person. But that's why it's good that we have that experience at the linebacker and secondary position. Is we have a lot of returning talent that's going to be helpful for experience for kind of, learning a new system is always going to be, a little bit of an overhaul, change and adapt. But, when you have experienced guys that have, you're just not throwing them into their first game ever, they're able to adapt and learn from that and everything. So that's my question mark on defense. It's just what the line is going to, who's going to emerge besides, hopefully Ty Robinson.
And I think it's key what you said there too, because that's been talked about too with Tony White on his after practice conferences, is that, people have asked well, how are you going to implement the 3-3-5? Because it's totally new from what some of these guys are playing. And he straight up said yeah, I might generally run a 3-3-5, but that's not a guarantee. That's not what I'm always going to run. He basically said that his defense is fluid. There's probably a framework, I guess, that he lives in, but his defense isn't strictly, it has to be 3-3-5. He straight up said that, he might move guys around and it might not necessarily be a 3-3-5. It might be a 3-4, 4-3, whatever. he's gonna move it around to where he can get guys in the best position he can.
Mhm.
And that, again, to me is kind of a key thing, because he's playing to the strengths of the players at that point, rather than being so hard-nosed, like, this is what we have to run and you have to play
Right.
this position. Like, no, he's trying to set them up for success. What scares me is that if this all works in the next couple of years, we're going to be shopping for new coordinators again here before too long. And it's like, darn it, it's the damned if you do, damned if you don't. I won't be upset if we get there, but it's going to be like, darn.
Because the hope at that point is, Nebraska is contending for championships again. If other people are trying to poach your coaches at that point, so that's the trade-off. Is you don't want your coaches to leave if we're doing well, but if they are leaving because they're getting poached, it's because Nebraska is doing something well at the same time.
And also, coaches will want to come here too if they're doing well. Mm-hmm. So there's, again, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
But
throw it over to Nate for the secondary. I mean, a lot of returning names with that. Biggest one you lose there is Miles Farmer started, I think, 11 games last year.
Yep, losing Farmer's gonna hurt. He's going to Syracuse now, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Who was our former secondary coach, went to Syracuse. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember who that was, but that's the tie for that.
That was Fisher, wasn't it? Travis.
Oh yeah, Travis Fisher.
I believe so. But I mean, we still have some guys, that are, I think, are going to step in. We got, like you mentioned, we got Hartzog, we got Buford, Tommy Hill has been transitioning into that role. Phelan Sanford, I think, would be an interesting name going forward.
Yep. Heard that one a lot too.
From Benkelman. He's back from my neck of the woods. Could be interesting to see, to watch.
This is the guy that lives in California.
My former neck of the woods, sir. But no, I think it's a lot like kind of our backers. There's a lot of experience, a lot of just good athletes that we'll have in those positions, and especially if we're going to be primarily at least running a 3-3-5, I think that's going to bode well for us, just knowing that we have those guys that are going to be able to step into those positions and have at least some experience. I think there's going to be probably some new faces we'll see along the way, but overall there's a lot of returning faces, a lot of experience there. It's going to, I think, lead to some good things there. As you guys mentioned, I think our defense is going to be probably our best group. It'll be uncertain with the transition to the new scheme, but I think the experience will carry us a long ways as long as we can learn how to tackle.
Yes.
That still scares me. And
your biggest stipulation.
There have just been still some videos out of practice where you watch it and you're like, oh, wow, our offense is doing, wait a minute, that's just the defense not doing their job.
That's the worst part about those hype videos that they're releasing lately, is that like you see a really good offensive play, and then the first thing that comes to your mind, because we're Nebraska fans, is not what a great play. Was our defense really bad there?
Yep.
Was our
Do you want to tackle Gabe Irvin as he is right now?
I don't want to tackle anybody as they are right now. So no. Of course not.
But that being said, I have heard too that our defense has been winning a lot of the practices as well. So again, kind of that double-edged sword of is our offense not great, or is but I think we can, I don't know. Hopefully we'll be shaking some of that doubt off in a little over a week here, and we'll be seeing just kind of where everything's at. We'll have a better idea of what this team really looks like and what they can do on the field, and I don't know. That's exciting.
I think what you just said, Nate, though, speaks to what we touched on earlier, though, where like, is like the defense doing this good or is the offense doing good? I think it's kind of well known at this point that like the defense is the workhorse side of the ball for us this year. Not because the offense can't do it. It's just there's so much question there at offense. It's like, I think they're kind of hoping that the defense is the one that's going to carry them because the offense has so many questions until they can start to gel throughout the year. It's like the defense is the one that's going to have to be like, hey, like we need to put kind of like, was that last year or 2 years ago under Frost, where like our defense was clearly the better unit because we had 6 years. That was that last year?
It was the 3-9 season.
No, it was 2 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
So So, like our defense was clearly better than our offense, but it still didn't really amount to anything. But
Right.
I think we're kind of in that scenario again. I think the good news is that the way you can rank it to me is that it's, our defense, and this is how I'm saying it in the terms of Nebraska team. It's defense great, offense good, and then special teams I think might be the biggest question mark, just because you don't really ever see anything about it in terms of
punting should be the same. I mean, Bushini's back, so he had a couple bad punts, but overall was more consistent.
And I mean, Ed Foley, the coach, is speaking very highly. He's I don't know if you guys caught this, by the way, but Matt Rule has also said that risking it and going for specific things for special teams, trying to return. Oh, that's what it was. Trying to return a punt specifically.
Yeah.
It's
Are we going to return kicks at all?
Yeah. It's just easier to fair catch it. That's what we did last year, which understandably I think makes sense. But, Ed Foley, the special teams coach, has basically said, no, we're going to return the ball. Like he said, maybe not every time, but we're going to return the ball.
Right.
You got to surprise the team somehow. It's possible. We have the talent to do it. And he has said that too. It's like, we have the talent to do it. We just got to go out and do it. And so I also really like him as a coach. I think he's going to be a really good positive influence for the special teams, which has been very questionable for Nebraska for a few years now.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping we can kick some field goals.
And that's the biggest question. That's the biggest question mark is, you get the scholarship Tristan Alvano, freshman kicker, who, if you know anything about the Nebraska State High School Football Championship, he played at Westside. He went 5 for 5 in that game with a couple 40+ yard field goals. I think it was the state record for most field goals at a state championship game. But, the next day they offered him a full ride to Nebraska. So it's kind of been a position battle between him and Bleak Road from last year. I don't really know who's going to be the starter. I guess we'll find out on the depth chart when they release it. But both have had good and bad notes out of fall and training camp. So, yeah, I don't really know who's going to kick field goals. Like you said, Zach, I just want someone that's going to, if we kick a
they can kick the field goal all they want.
In.
Yeah, I was going to say they can kick the field goal all they want. I just want to see him make it.
Yep.
If 30 yards or less, I shouldn't have to be on the edge of my seat hoping that he makes it.
I just thought of this the other day. Do you guys remember when we had Alex Henry, and if it was 40 yards or more, and it was just not worried about it?
We just had we were super blessed with every kicker for the longest time, both kicking and punting. We'd never had to worry about a single thing, and then it just stopped.
Here's the year that we hope that changes. We can say that now.
It's good though that there's competition between kickers. I think that'll it's good to see that they're gonna, I don't know, at least hopefully have a positive feedback loop there and work to make each other better. Or I mean, yeah, hopefully we find one that knows how to kick. But if they both figure it out,
this could all come back to bite us in the butt too, because it's we love all the competition. That means that we might have a solid set of guys, and it could be oh no, we still suck. We don't know, but God, we can hope for the first.
Yeah, and kicking is just such an enigma where there's just a lot of outside variables that can go into it, and you just gotta hope that whoever's doing it has the right head on their shoulders.
Yes.
It's just I've heard a lot of good things about the Tristan Alvano kid. So
hopefully he
sounds like in practice he's been nailing some pretty long kicks in most of his kicks. So
let's hope that stays.
Yeah. But yeah, I think with that, we'll kind of move into a broader spectrum before we break down our preview for the schedule of Nebraska's final records and everything of just kind of the college football landscape as we know it right now. So it was kind of a quiet offseason until everything went up in smoke of people just wanting to leave conferences for some reason. You know, I mean, we obviously saw it last year with USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten, and you know, Oklahoma and Texas a couple of years ago saying that they'll go to the SEC eventually. But you know, there's like, I think it was either at the start of this month or like the end of July that like Oregon and Washington, and you heard all those rumblings of people just like, peace out, we're leaving the Pac-12. Everybody's ditching the Pac-12. So
RIP.
conference realignment, yeah, RAP Pac-12 after dark forever. It was fun while it lasted, but
Hey, they're still the Pac-4. They're still the Pac-4.
the Pac-4. We're getting 4 West Coast teams, so it'll be Big Ten after dark, but it just won't feel the same anymore.
Yep.
Because then I'll be actually invested in those games because Nebraska will probably be playing in them now. I was invested before, but I wasn't really invested where I had interest on the line. But yeah, that's that. And then, you know, this year starts the 4-year squad for the 4 new Big 12 schools of BYU, UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati, I believe.
That sounds right.
Starting the Big 12. So the Big 12 is going to have 16 teams until Oklahoma and Texas leave next year. But, and then, yeah, I think outside of that, you know, just everybody's ditching conferences. The Big 10 is going to look completely different next year with 18 teams.
For now,
wild to
For
see.
now, yeah, this could still change.
We're gonna get the CBS music for Big Ten this year. Watching Rutgers and Maryland on 2:30 on a Saturday on CBS.
That's another thing. Is like Nebraska has so many like evening and afternoon games, which is fine. Like that's great, but it's just like, dang.
Yeah,
what happened?
And that's you know that's just college football is kind of going into, it's going to be the SEC Big Ten versus everybody else at this moment.
SEC Big 10 rest.
It's and you know the ACC Big 12. You know they're doing what they need to do to stay afloat, but you know it's really going to be those 2 conferences versus everybody else, and it's going to be it's going to be a brand game. It's going to be, well, we have the better brands in this conference than you do. That's kind of going to pull the markets to one of those 2 conferences now. And that's just kind of something that we have to wait and see how college football shakes up. But with that, I think we're just kind of go into and I mean, we could kind of preview the Big Ten too at this point of, you know, I think the East, you know, it's either going to be Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State. A lot of talk about Penn State being really good this year. So I won't be surprised to either see them kind of tied for the conference standings in the East. You know, I could, you know, pulling out wins against Ohio State and Michigan every year is going to be pretty tough. This might be the year they do it. You know, they might split those games. They might lose all 2 games against those 2, but you know, Michigan, top preseason favorite right now for the Big Ten, followed by Ohio State, and then I think Penn State or Wisconsin's up there too. But Big Ten West is wide open. I don't know what's going to happen. A lot of people think Wisconsin's going to be good, and I could see it, but you know, they're overhauling their entire team.
I think Wisconsin has the veteran presence. That's what's going to help carry them.
And that's, you know, you can have that all you want, but you know, they're doing something completely different that they haven't done for like 20 years. And that's like an air raid versus a I formation, run the ball type team. And, you know, you can do that, but if your recurrent, like retained guys are built for that kind of system, you kind of modify them to, you know, be more athletic in a sense of you got to pass the ball. You got to be a skill position player to, you know, run that type of offense. Purdue has a new head coach. You know, the whole Northwestern thing is, we won't really get too much into that.
I don't think we have to worry too much about Northwestern this year. And that's not to dog on the team. There's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on there, and they're going to be a bad football team anyways.
Yeah.
I don't know about Illinois. You know, they lose Chase Brown. They lose their 2 defensive top picks to the draft. Their defensive coach went to Purdue to be the head coach. So I think their defense will probably take a little bit of a step back too. And I don't know what their offense is going to look like, but you know, you have Bielema's the head veteran coach, so he's going to know what to do there. I think. I don't know. And then you have
Illinois is being touted as like a favorite for the West too. So
to me,
that would be my top.
It's probably going to be between.
I could see them or Iowa, honestly.
Iowa, I think, is just the safe pick because there's besides the whole gambling scandal, which doesn't really affect their team too much, but
it's right there. They can do it there. I know. Can't do it here, so I get it. Why not?
We sort of can't do it here, just not online.
Not
online, but
exactly.
But I mean, it's you've got the most retained college coach right now, the most active retained college coach in the Big Ten currently. I think they're just the safe pick just because you know what you're going to get from Iowa. They didn't really have a lot of turnover. They brought in J.J. McCarthy, who's probably going to give them better passing options now. So I think just from if I had to pick,
they needed it.
I mean, I don't want to pick Iowa, but like my safe pick to win the West is just Iowa, just because you kind of know what you're going to get experience-wise, and it's probably going to come down to their last couple of games, and I think their schedule is more favorable this year. I don't think they have either Ohio State or Michigan this year.
I think that still kind of speaks, though, just to like how crazy it is, because like Nebraska could be competing, maybe not necessarily for Big Ten championship, but
they have Penn State, but they don't have to play Ohio State or Michigan this year, that's very favorable to them.
They do play Kansas though, at Kansas.
Go Lightpool.
Let's go, Kansas. I do wonder, and I'm sure this will all come out soon. I mean, I think they've already got kind of a framework idea, but I do wonder like how different with now 18 teams, potentially more coming in within, the next year or two, how different, some of these are going to, I mean, I'm sure a lot of what we know now in terms of like who we play, regularly will stay the same, or at least stay relatively the same, but it'll be so interesting to me how it's going to change just in general, because there's going to be so many teams that are now in the Big Ten, or that will be in the Big Ten rather, that are going to be different. They're going to be new. That's going to change up how we play. I think the whole pod system, I'm still not entirely, I get the idea kind of, but
you remember when we came out with the next 2 year schedules, and then like 2 weeks later we added more teams for next year.
Exactly. And it's like, at what point, like we've joked about it, like when we were talking back and forth, whatever we've been doing, it's like, I can't wait for like 5 to 10 years from now when they're like, guys, we got a genius system. Let's split all these teams up into different divisions and different conferences. It's like, we had that. Why did we go away from it?
We're gonna have like a big 8, like a Pacific 10, maybe. Maybe an Atlantic Coast Conference could be
labeled a division within our conference.
I'm already seeing them. They're just going to be like, all right, guys, we're going to name it let's see, Pac. Okay. And they're throwing darts at a board. Like Pac 10. All right. And then Big 8. Oh, we got it. All right.
It'll be these Pac-12 or these Pac-10 teams, but under the Big Ten name. So that'll be their division. And then these 8 schools, but under the Big Ten. So they'll be the Big 8.
We joke about that. However, it's not going to go that way, because that would make too much sense to go back to what didn't work. It's going to be worse. It's going to be like the Pac-12 under Big 10, like some, I don't know, Big 24 or something, like whatever. Okay, we're done. We don't know anymore.
But yeah, I think.
Thank God they don't make us, let us make decisions. That's 100% how I do it. Dartboard. I'd be like, we got it. We'll figure it out.
I'm kind of torn by this whole realignment stuff, because I mean, it's exciting to be able to just get the opportunity to compete against teams like, USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, and be able to just see how we match up against them on a more consistent basis, rather than just maybe we see them in a bowl game every 4 years or something. It'll be good in that sense that overall it brings some interesting games to the forefront, and then it will make teams, or it'll force teams to be just more competitive overall. But I think in the big picture, the realignments just not going to be good for college football. I mean,
it's not even
something's
over
going
because
to give.
you got the other 4 remaining schools left, and I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, I thought I saw something today that like Stanford and maybe Cal were in talks, and SMU were in
ACC?
talks with this ACC.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I don't
Who
know.
knows?
It's gonna be weird how everything shakes out. I think ultimately, probably the structure as it is going to collapse, and there's going to be some sort of, at least I've heard or just read that there's rumblings that NCAA football could just be its own separate entity compared to like basketball and volleyball,
Mhm.
that are a little more, you have games, couple games every week that travel. You can't be going coast to coast.
Mhm.
Rutgers to UCLA Friday night, and then back to Maryland on Sunday or something.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's
this isn't feasible.
College basketball lives on that though too. Like
yeah.
college football kind of does. If anything, it's more for like the rivalries and stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't call me, Gen Z, whatever. At this point, if you're older listening to this and like, oh, rivalries matter, they do. But at this point, I think I don't think it's as big of a deal anymore as it used to be. At least in terms of the conference aspect of it. I think the rivalries will always still be there. It's just, being that a bunch of these teams are leaving the conferences or joining different conferences, it may not happen as much. So, but I don't think they'll ever necessarily go away.
Right. And that's all of this is being done with football in mind and nothing else. That there's not a second thought given to basketball, baseball, volleyball, all the other sports, just because they're not as big moneymakers as college football is to the TV networks and everything. So it's not going to stop anytime soon until we maybe think we're settled for a while. I don't even know. But yeah, we'll kind of jump into looking ahead to Minnesota, looking our rest of the Nebraska schedule, given our predictions of what we think. So again, kind of going back to the team point of what we talked about earlier is, going into this game is we don't really know what we're going to see from our team. We don't know. We have an idea of what Matt Rule might want to do and what he wants the team to look like, but we really don't know until he puts the product on the field, then we know what it might look like. We know that we're going to run a lot. We might pass a lot, depending on our wide receiver health room. It's just, I'm glad we get Minnesota early because they are a team that typically starts slow until they get later into the season, and then they kind of solidify themselves. So I'm glad we're getting Minnesota like right off the bat, right early. It's always like, you kind of want to warm up with your non-conference games before you get into conference play. But, if you start with a conference game right out of the gate, it's kind of Minnesota has no idea how to game plan for us because the only film they might have is the spring game, and that's it. So that's kind of the advantage for Nebraska is you kind of know what Minnesota's going to do because PJ Fleck hasn't really changed the whole lot. That they're probably going to run and pound the ball, even though they don't have Mo Ibrahim anymore. But, Minnesota, he's been really good about kind of what's like Wisconsin has done is just getting a good running back in there to take the load over. So you know what you're going to get from Minnesota, but he doesn't know what he's going to get from Nebraska because we don't even know what it's going to look like. But, it just first game jitters is always going to be a thing for all of us. But I think just going forward, what I want to see from the game is, limiting the mistakes. Just, try not to do anything fancy at, crunch times, like an onside kick when you're up 2 scores.
Hey, Rule hasn't
would do
necessarily.
that?
Rule
Yeah,
hasn't
who would do that?
necessarily. Rule. He hasn't said that he won't do that.
But he shouldn't do that.
Hey, call it crazy, but a bunch of NFL teams did it this last year too. Now, did it ever work? No, but the point still stands.
Were a lot of those coaches' jobs on the line at the beginning of the season?
Also, no. But, well, one might have been because wasn't McDaniels at the Raiders I think he might still be.
He still is with the Raiders.
Yeah. So
Shouldn't be, but he is.
I mean, that one, there was never a guarantee he was going to make it through the year. So,
But yeah,
not the point.
as I could go either way with this game. I could see Nebraska coming out, being confident, winning the game. I could see them, losing by a touchdown or two. And I think the spread right now is either 7 or 7.5. Yeah. So, just that's kind of what I expected it to be, given that the history of Minnesota starting slow, plus you have the unknown of Nebraska. So, if this was Scott's last team from last year, I think that line's probably bigger advantage for Minnesota. So I think just the unknown factor makes the line a little bit closer for Nebraska in terms of who the bettors at least think is going to win the game. So I don't know if I have a prediction of the score in my mind at the moment. Maybe I'll think of it as we circle back, but just right now, edging just kind of towards Minnesota, just because, again, you get the unknown of Nebraska, but I don't think it's going to be a big kind of blowout that we would expect from a Scott-led team or anything like that going into first games of the year. So we'll pass it to one of you two, just kind of your thoughts about what you want to see from the game, just going into the hopefully sinking the boat at PJ Fleck.
Yeah, I think what I want to see is just, like you mentioned, limiting mistakes. I want to see consistency, and I just want to see at least, and it doesn't have to be anything set in stone, but just an attempt to kind of set an identity, and like, this is going to be what Nebraska football is for the 2023 season. I want to see whether it be that smash mouth, run it down your throat football, whether it be some sort of spread attack, whether it be just a physical defense presence. I just want to see us establish something and kind of right out the gate say, this is what Nebraska football is. This is what's going to be. Here we are, try and beat us kind of mentality. And that's really what I want to see. I want to see the guys come out there. I want to see them, give their all and just see where it goes from there. I think that's really all we can ask, especially first game. Potential seems like it's there for us to have, like I said, at least a decent season. I mean, we'll go a little more in depth on the over under of what we're thinking for games total on the season. But I mean, feasibly there's a road where bowl game's not out of the question or anything. And so I think, especially just coming right out the gate against a Minnesota team that, like you said, isn't going to have a whole lot of film on us, won't really know exactly what we look like or kind of how we're going to come out, I think is going to play to our advantage. And if we can come out strong against Minnesota, not even win, but just come out strong and at least play with them, I think that's going to really set the tone for the rest of the season.
And you're right there. It's Rule has also said, like, Minnesota is going to come out, try to do the same thing to us. I mean, it's you throw on a whole new team and a lot of these young kids into an experienced Big Ten game right out of the gate. So it's definitely going to be just a man versus man type football game of you're throwing a lot of your new players just into the meat of what a Big Ten game would simulate and be like for them. So yeah, it's going to be a physical game for sure, especially if both teams are dead set on running the football. So that's going to be just a game that's going to be won by the lines at the same time.
Yeah, but I will say that I know their quarterback, that Cali McManus, was, because he came in once Tanner Morgan got injured against us
and played a lot better.
He was running all over us. That'll be something
we shouldn't have hurt Tanner Morgan.
But then they also have that wide receiver, that I think Ottman Bell, who's I think on some pretty prestigious lists to have a decent season. So a lot of things to be able to have to key on, and it'll be a good Big Ten test for us to kind of see where we're at early on the season, and especially going into the next 2 or 3 games there against your Colorado, Louisiana Tech, and Northern Illinois. It'll be, like I said, just a good kind of statement game to gauge ourselves for the rest of the season. So
I would agree. For me, it kind of goes to what you guys have already said, and I'll just make a quick little note here. But I think one thing that Minnesota does really well is they play what we know as Big Ten football, where the first half, they might not necessarily look great. Just look at last year's game. They might not look the greatest, but then they still play to their strengths. They stick to what they know works. Even if that means they, have a couple fourth downs where they have to punt. And, I don't want to say they play safe. They play their brand of football.
Mm-hmm.
And so then in the second half, the thing is that they come out and they do it again, and they really don't change a whole lot. They change some, they might update a thing here or there, and they make some changes. Then you finally see, third quarter, fourth quarter, then it all starts to click, and that's when it takes off, and that's where their game is won. In that back half of the game, specifically that fourth quarter, that's where the team that is playing to their strengths and playing well will win the game is the fourth quarter. And Minnesota, for everything that we don't like about them, they've done that well. If they're a well-coached team, I don't care for PJ Fleck personally, but I can't say he's not a good coach.
And I think that's what Matt Rule wants to do is, like you said, we give PJ Fleck so much crap because he's goofy, dorky kind of culture guy, but his team and his players believe that, and I think that's what Rule wants to do too. No matter how tacky, goofy, dorky it is,
as long as Rule doesn't come out with like a shuck the corn or something, I'll be.
Oh yeah,
the row the boat thing. No,
that'd be a bad look.
But I will say, obviously,
butter the cob.
Like I said, like you said, it goes to the culture thing. So maybe that's what we get. But yeah, I do think though this is a lot of people were like, oh man, I wish we could get a couple other games, before that, our second and third game. I don't remember our schedule off the top of my head, and I don't have it pulled up, but a lot of people are like, oh, I wish we could get some of those, tune-up games or whatever you call them. I don't necessarily agree with that. I like the idea of let's go out and let's play a Big Ten rival. Might not be the right word, but I mean, Minnesota is probably one of our closest rivals if we had to name
It's our historically longest rival in terms of Big Ten teams we have played. We've played Minnesota the most historic-wise out of any other Big Ten team that Nebraska has ever faced. So
there you go. There's what we needed. So
I don't know exactly how many off the top of my head, but I know they're the most played Big Ten team Nebraska has ever played in history. So
there you go. You know what? I'll fall on the sword first then. But like I said, I think Minnesota will play good football. I think Nebraska will play good football. I think it's going to be a tough game. Got to think here real quick. For me, I think I'm going to go with 24-21 for Nebraska. I think Nebraska pulls out the win, honestly.
Okay.
I think 24-21 is where I'm at, and I think Matt Rule pulls out his first win and also shows a sign of life at Nebraska.
Just kind of going off of that, it's tough because I can see this going both ways. I can see this, being exactly what the spread says for Minnesota. I could see this being a 1-point victory for Nebraska. So if I'm just going to play it safe. I'm just, let's say 28-17 Minnesota. I think it's going to be a battle to the end, but, I think Minnesota just gets that extra experience and pulls out just what we know that an experienced coach and an experienced team can do kind of in crunch time when the games are close. Is just be able just to do the extra little work just to get over that hump and win the game. So, it's just so unknown of what the game is going to look like at the moment. But I'll kind of play it safe. I'll, stay with Vegas. I'll stay with the bettors. And
boo.
I know. I always want to be wrong with these predictions, especially when I pick against Nebraska. But, I also want to be right with my predictions.
Boo. Yeah, I'm gonna I don't know. I'm going to deviate just a little bit because just looking at like Minnesota's 7.5, favored by 7.5. Over under is only 44.5, so they're expecting generally a pretty low scoring game. I think
Shocker, a Big Ten game.
I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna deviate from that just because I think this could be one of those weirdo ball games where it's early in the season, both teams are kind of tuning things up, haven't had their whatever FCS team that they've hung 70 on. So I think this could be one of those just kind of weird games. I don't know if I trust defenses yet to have a whole lot of traction, but I'm going to go a little just higher scoring. I'm thinking somewhere 35-30 Nebraska. I think Matt Rule is going to not have his game canceled by a thunderstorm.
Don't say it.
And
Don't
we
say
are
that.
going to ride into the sunset 1-0, moving into Colorado on September 6th, I believe. 9th. There we go.
9th.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Thursday game,
Yeah.
Which reminder for that game, if you don't already know, third random, TV network game, but Thursday night, August 31st, 7:00 on the main Fox network channel. So big time network TV game there. So really great for Nebraska to be put on national brand right away with a brand new head coach and team.
I love
At
it.
least we're not in
Bring it
Ireland.
on. Bring it on, baby. At least we are not an island. That's so true, though. That's a huge thing.
Yes. And that's just, I'm sure if it was Minnesota and, Rutgers or Maryland or whatever, probably wouldn't be a thing. But the fact that Nebraska, despite how bad they've been, you still see the Nebraska football brand and you're like, oh, they're, former blue blood trying to get back there. Like the TV networks know, like you're going to draw in fans to Nebraska games, no matter what TV network you're going to put them on. So that's just, having that brand and that's, winning is going to only exacerbate that and make that much larger and bigger with that. But quickly, before we wrap it up, we'll kind of go through just the overall season prediction of what we're feeling. What Nate said is, you'd rather start off with your non-conference games, and Nebraska starts with 2 away games, but you flip that, you look at it, it's like, okay, after that, you get 7 home games, and you only have to go on the road 3 times after that the rest of the season. So a majority of your games after these first 2 road games is you get to play the next 7 out of your 10 games at home, which is huge, especially for a team that's trying to get their feet on the ground and running. So like Nate said, there's easily a path to a bowl game here. If Nebraska starts 4-0, I'll put my money out there is that they're making a bowl game, because you can easily look at Northwestern as a 5th win, and then Purdue might have a setback down year, so that could be number 6. I don't know how
Purdue
good Maryland.
Pete says no.
Well, he's scary, so
that's why he makes the decisions. It's not the team; it's him. Purdue Pete says what's up.
I mean, Maryland might be good this year, but that could be another win because that game's at home, so that's a slight advantage to Nebraska. I don't know how Michigan State's going to be. Mel Tucker's kind of had a up and down year since who was their running back? Kenneth Walker. Since Kenneth Walker left, he hasn't really been the same coach and team, so that could go either way. But it's if they're 4-0 heading to the Michigan game, I mean, well, that's already big noon kickoff, but just the hype around that game in general could be like what Oklahoma was last year, and they get boat raced. But I think most bettors have Nebraska at 5.5 or like the 6.5 win total, which is it's basically a push, because I could see them easily winning 7 games as their ceiling. I could easily see them winning 3. But I will be bold. I'll do 6-6 as my season prediction here.
That's bold.
Well,
maybe bold for you, I guess. That's fair.
It's bold considering I am trying to be a little more pessimistic and realistic on how I view Nebraska football now until I start obviously chugging more of the Roulade. But yeah, I mean, easily if they start 4-0, they're probably going to make a bowl game. Even if they're, if you lose the first 2 games, you're 2-2. I mean, it's not impossible. It's just tougher. But even 3-1, you're definitely still more on track to make a bowl game this year. And I think, I don't think Rule is looking at it as like, oh, the bare minimum is a bowl game this year. I don't think that's how he wants his team to think. But, to most Nebraska fans, I mean, yeah, right. In this current situation, we shouldn't be happy with the bowl game. We shouldn't be content with the bowl game. But that's what, after how many years of not making a bowl game, I mean, that's what we want right now, is we just want some sort of winning and validation that, yes, this thing can get on the right track again to national relevance. And, that's where I'm kind of sitting right now. But yeah, I think just the 5 to 6 win range is just where I think we're going to end up. It's just, at what point is going to be that 4th, 5th win at the season? Is it going to be really early? Is it going to be later in the season when you are dealing against Wisconsin, Maryland, Iowa, kind of towards the end of the season, where, okay, you might not win those games if you're trying to pick a bowl game going into those games at all. So with that, pass it to one of you two and see if your Roulade says natty or bust.
Go for it, Nate.
Yeah, so this is definitely a tough one. Because, I mean, if we're going to be real about it, Matt Rule has had some pretty rough starts to his tenures. That just not really a knock on him, but it's kind of the reality of the situation. Is you're coming into a new place, be it what Baylor and Temple were just kind of had their own internal issues, and were just not really, I don't know, national powerhouse programs. Coming into Nebraska, definitely not a national powerhouse program at this current stage, as much as it pains me to say. And so I think there's definitely a lot of work to do. It's going to be an uphill battle this season. I don't think everything's going to be very pretty. It's probably going to be kind of one of those drag them out, slug them out type seasons. But I feel like 7-5 is going to be my sweet spot.
Yeah.
I think there's enough potential. Matt Rule seems like a guy who is bringing it all together. I know there's going to be the growing pains. There's going to be the just kind of getting everyone used to the new schemes, new systems. But he seems like a very level-headed guy that knows how to really just bring a group of people together and fight towards one cause. And I think that is really going to bode well for us moving ahead. I think our schedule is genuinely pretty favorable for at least a somewhat positive outcome. And I think this probably getting close to our ceiling for the season, but I'm going to go with that ceiling play and say 7-5 for my prediction on the season.
And a note on that, I mean, this is the most experienced team, I guess, in terms that Matt Rule has stepped into, in terms of talent that's already out of school. And well, sorry about that then.
No, that's okay. No, that's 100% what I was going to say. Is he's said even that like his year ones at Temple and Baylor were where he's at here. It feels more like year 2 there,
right.
Which I think is a huge thing to bring up. And with that, I'll just go into my season predictions. But it's, that's really unfortunate that Andy took mine, because I was supposed to be forever the optimist. So I had those were my 2 options. I was like, oh, I could, split the middle, or, be the guy that's going to go all in. Well, of course I have to also be different, but you guys already talked on it. And again, with the Rule, feels like he's in year 2 here with Nebraska rather than year 1, like he was at Baylor. And, what we just said there. I think that's a big key point to take away. I do also think that, going back to how much we've touched on it, with how honest he's been with the team, even saying that, before I think spring ball, he's like, oh, these guys look good in practice. We don't know if we're going to be good. I mean, that comment still rings true to me, is that, like, he's going to coach to the best of his abilities, but at the end of the day, it's, he's going to work his best to make sure that he's doing what he can. But again, this is the first year under a whole new system with whole new players to him, whole new coach to the players. This is out there. I was going to say 6-6, but I suppose to be different, and unfortunately, it's going to paint me as the pessimist. But I will say 5-7.
5-7, yeah, and that's
it's a
reasonable
5-7,
pick, and that's
it's like you said, Andy. Though it's one of those things. Like I'm sitting on the fence, saying, do I go 6-6? Do I go 5-7? I don't know. And the worst part is that 6-6, 7-5, and 5-7. As we all went around the horn here, none of those are inconceivable. Like nobody's sitting here saying, "Oh, like they said 9-3, like there it is. There's the unrealistic expectation." No, not at all. If anything, my real expectation is 6-6, but I'll put 5-7 on paper just so it's down there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think kind of to start kind of some closing thoughts, I guess, if you will, before we kind of wrap up the rest of our stuff. I think it's going to be a fun year. It might be a tough year, and I think it could be a long-ish year just because there's a lot of question marks that need to be answered. And I think what makes me think it'll be fun, though, is that we have a head coach that very much seems to care and very much wants this to work out, and isn't afraid to take the criticism where it needs to be. Not that I don't think any previous coaches were, but I think, when Rule has said this, and I've said it already tonight, is that, if you fail at the highest level, maybe it's time to come back down to earth, or, whatever he's at exactly. It's just, he's failed at the highest level of football. And so now he's coming back to where he feels comfortable. And he seems to be able to connect with a bunch of guys, especially with the fact that he's been able to retain the players. I think there's a lot of value in what he brings. And yeah, even though I have to be the pessimist with 5-7,
that's kind of where I go back and forth too. Yeah. I could, all of these options are very conceivable, and, if things go the right way, they can be more, but it could easily be, like I said, be another 3-9 season. Like, it's just, there's so many variables that go into each game, and just the unknowns of this team, like you said, Zach, that any of these options are possible just because, like, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Any other last minute thoughts from you guys?
I think we're going to get into a couple different new things we're going to try out this year. So Zach's very excited about it.
This one goes out to the loyal listeners, the ones that stuck with us through our first year. The rough beginnings. That was our first 3 or 4 episodes. We have decided this year to start doing trivia revolving around Husker football, essentially, but there might be some others that come up in terms of Husker players, Husker coaches, whatever. So we're going to start off easy, but before we get into what the question is, if you want to answer and take part in this, you're perfectly, what we ask right now is we don't have a really good way to do this. So unfortunately, we're just doing it by email. So we'll start putting that. If you watch us on YouTube, we'll put that in the description.
This is the 1990s.
I need to look that up. I need to look up a better way to do it. But unfortunately, I have to take the answers by email right now. I kind of dropped the ball here. So anyway, our email address is Nebraskabilities. So it's in the title of, wherever you look at the podcast, it's the first word, Nebraskabilities@gmail.com. And that's where you'll submit your answer. And then what we'll do is we'll tally up as many people that got it right, and then we'll randomly at the end of the year, we'll select from a drawing of some sort, and you'll win a prize. We haven't decided what the prize is, but you will get a prize from the 3 of us of some form, and we're still working through that. We'll announce it as we get near the end of the year too. So the trivia question for the week is, and this is an easy one. We're starting off very easy, very
Don't
simple.
Cheat.
Yeah, try not to cheat. But I guess if you do, I don't care.
Well, I care.
the winner of the week will be based on whoever submits the first email timestamp wise, to us. So, and then as you know, the one who wins it the most will win the prize. So if you win 4 trivia games and that's the most of the year or trivia weeks, you'll get the prize. Which goes against the entire drawing thing I just said. I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. We're still a work in progress.
I was gonna say.
Anyway, sorry. So the question for this week is, which Big Ten school did Matt Rule play for? And what years did he play? Now, that's the question itself, but you can get a bonus point for the trivia question by also answering what was his position that he played at this school. So, one more time. What Big Ten school did Matt Rule play for, and during what years did he play? And the bonus is what was his position that he played at that school. There will not always be a bonus question, but that one just seemed like a really good introduction to where Matt Rule came from. So, send that into the email, and we'll get that, and then we'll start tallying those up. And then if you get to the end of the year, you'll get a prize from us. And then the other thing that's new, if you will, the other thing that's new is we have a new system that we're working with. So you'll be able to see, if you go onto YouTube and watch us when we do these, you'll be able to see we put little things on the bottom, like our names and our predictions. So you can kind of follow along. It's not really new, but it's new to us, so you'll forgive us, hopefully, as we work through. As with that, I also put our email at the bottom in a banner. So that's the email. And if you're listening to this on a podcast and you personally know one of us, you're more than welcome to message us too. You can also look it up on our socials. We're on Facebook. Well, it's formerly Twitter, now X, whatever.
Whatever that thing is.
Those two. So if you just look up Nebraskabilities podcast, you'll find the emails and everything there. You can also submit your answers there, although email would be preferred just so they're all in one spot, but we'll figure that out. And then the other one that's new, we won't announce yet, but it's coming next week after the first game. Maybe a hint, maybe a spoiler.
We don't know.
No, we don't know.
That's the best part is we don't even know.
we're still working on it too. But I think with that, trivia being the biggest new addition, hopefully you like it. That's all I got. You guys got anything else to throw in?
No. Nate, I'll wrap it up here, but let you speak first.
I don't have anything too profound. I'll just say, in Rural we trust, and go Big Red.
Pretty much what I was going to say too.
I'm right there. Welcome to another season, and we hope that you stick around with us for another year.
And remember, if it's a possibility, it's the Nebraskability.